This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data, and analysis over at businessofapps.com.
Welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. On this show, we invite app industry professionals to cover various topics, and we promise to do our best to keep it both insightful but brief. In this episode, we have back Lexi Sydow Director, Corporate Marketing and Insights at Data.ai. Lexi, welcome back to the Business of Apps podcast.
Thank you so much for having me again. I am very happy to be here.
Awesome. It is so great to have you on. It's always a pleasure when you come on the show. All right. Where should I start? I think I'm going to start here. How was your shopping this year? How long is your Amazon 2023 orders list by now? Is it 20 items, 30, 100, 200, or more? Of course, it was not only you, and it was not only about Amazon, even though you may justifiably have an impression that it's always about Amazon. Well, the whole planet went shopping every second on multiple retail apps. To comprehend that scale, we've invited Lexi to talk about the latest report from Data.ai, Strategies to Master Retail on Mobile. Lexi, over the years, you've been on the show multiple times, but for the sake of folks who did not listen to those episodes and listening here right now for the first time, please talk about yourself and your background.
Thank you. Yes. So I lead corporate marketing and insights at Data.ai. I have been analyzing data and the mobile app economy and producing insights for over 8 years now, and I have been in research and analysis for a very long time. So love the space and really love being able to tell kind of the stories that the data is sort of presenting to us.
Great. Data.ai, or as people may still remember you as App Annie, has been one of the analytical pillars of the app industry. Please give me a quick sketch of what is Data.ai today and where are you guys on this generative AI adoption curve?
Absolutely. Yes. So Data.ai is formerly known as App Annie, for those of you who are our friends from early on in the industry. And we help mobile app publishers succeed on mobile, kind of across that whole life cycle through data and competitive analysis. We help businesses from acquisition to engagement to monetization and help craft better strategies. So we changed our name a few years back to better reflect how we generate our estimates. So we actually leverage something called applied artificial intelligence, or applied AI, which is a bit different to generative AI. We're not necessarily producing content, for instance, but this is how we use data science and some very sophisticated algorithms to create our mobile app estimates. And we're very proud of this, hence why we changed our name, because of this data science initiative, and that's kind of first and foremost approach to having both compliant and accurate estimates. And so we are very happy to be a part of that AI fervor that is kind of the world in a sense.
Yeah, it was a really good strategic change for the brand because it's been growing ever since, and we're not expecting AI to be smaller as time goes by. And people may think about generative AI only right now, but justifiably. ChatGPT has been grabbing the headlines for more than a year now. But AI started this not on the generative part, but in the analytical part. We all remember like the first iterations of the AI was when we could finally recognize, the software could recognize people on the pictures, animals, etc., and recognition now in many areas. So analytical capabilities of companies such as Data.ai has been built, like Lexi just told us, on AI algorithms. Now, for this episode, we have the report Strategies to Master Retail and Mobile, as I said. So let's give our listeners kind of a bird view for the report, how many apps were involved in putting it together, and what it covers, and so on.
Absolutely. It is a great report. Some of my colleagues help produce it. So it's full of insights as well as kind of tactical tips. So there's a bit of both in here. I think it's a great combination. We looked at thousands of apps. We pull data across over 175 markets to kind of generate this view. In the report, there's about, I think, about 17 different markets we focus on, but the global view is pulling across many, many worldwide. And I think it's a great report because it really is a time in the retail space where we're seeing more competition heating up, especially this year globally with the launch of Temu. So we wanted to offer more of a practical guide in this kind of climate. So mobile is underpinning the entire consumer experience of shopping, from research to point of purchase, the point of sale, to loyalty and redemption. So it's a very dynamic space, and it's an important time now for retailers to really focus on mobile, because you have these really strong mobile first players coming in with very sophisticated strategies. So we're starting to see that shake out in the space a lot, where Temu is at the heels of some of these big institutional retail players in the US.
Right. Now we're talking about the third page report. So this is the 30-minute episode. We're not capable to cover the entire report to squeeze into this short period of time. So we're going to be highlighting 5 things from the report, starting with this one, which is performance score benchmark. So what is it? What role does it play for a shopping apps landscape analysis?
Yes, the mobile performance score, or we call it MPS, is our proprietary metric. It's a kind of composite health score of your app. So basically, it gives you this sort of compass to see how you're performing and what sectors you might need to improve. So it's acquisition, engagement, sentiment, and monetization of your app. And so you can dive deeper into each of these buckets and see where you might need to focus more on your strategy. And the beauty of this metric is it is also driven by applied AI, and it is a great sort of almost like a credit score for an app. So one of the key things that we see is that the apps with the highest MPS score make up the bulk of downloads. So it's on a scale to 100, and those apps that have a score from 80 to 100 will make up almost 9 of every 10 downloads by the year 2025. So the bulk of the, what people are downloading on their phones and using will come from these high performing apps. Where we are now, actually in 2021, was about 85% of downloads were driven by those with a score of 80 or above. And then when you look at the very top echelon, so the 90 plus range, we actually see almost half of downloads there are made up by those who have a 90 plus score. And then by 2025, it'll be up to 6 of every 10. So it's a great metric to help you track and improve your app performance. And it's done at the subgenre level, so you can compare to your peers, but it also gives you a very nice way of comparing across industries. So if you want to see, for instance, some of these really good techniques that are coming from other sectors, so maybe some more mobile first sectors that are in the social space and have very good, virality techniques, for instance, this metric gives you a really great way, because it's on the same scale, that you can look at, oh, okay, this app is a great one to kind of look at how they're driving these techniques. So MPS is a really fun metric, and it's a very good one to help kind of hone where to look and how to prioritize some features.
Love the concept. It includes a bunch of different data points into a single benchmark and gives you a kind of a thumbs up and thumbs down where you're on the scale of your peers on the landscape of companies you're competing with. It's complicated. You do want to get into the nitty-gritty of analytics, but sometimes you need to see like what's your credit score, like you've said. It's a really good analogy. Now, by now, it's been well established that number one, people spend bulk of their time on mobile apps when they hold a smartphone, not on the mobile web in the browser. And the second thing is that for a number of years, people do their shopping on mobile. A bunch of things helped to this trend to establish robustness of payment processing, the screen size, the how long the battery holds, the e-commerce app sophistication. So all of these things convince people that they can do shopping on their mobile phone. So looking at the report data, how much time do people actually spend in shopping apps right now?
Yeah. We are actually seeing, well, globally, it's a lot. This is one of
Of
those
course.
things where I'm going to throw some numbers at you and it's going to feel kind of abstract and huge. Uh, but in 2023, we're actually on track to hit 50 billion hours spent in shopping apps on Android phones alone. And that is just hard to conceptualize. That is a lot of time. But this is up 42% from 2020. And that was that year during COVID, we really saw kind of the step function change in the uptake of shopping apps. So it's already off of that elevated base we started to really see in 2020. So it's a lot of time. And time spent is a great metric to look at because time spent along with sessions, and then that kind of session duration, that's sort of like your digital foot traffic. So it helps to indicate how much transactions basically might be happening. It correlates very highly with baskets and conversions, and also gives you an indication of that engagement that comes from the whole life cycle. So part of the beauty of mobile apps is that they're always there and you can kind of be researching on the go, but also that kind of end-to-end experience of tracking your package or redeeming your loyalty points or sharing codes with friends so that they can be referred in. So time spent is a really great metric because it does correlate very highly with transactions, but the value from mobile we see, yes, there is that core revenue piece, but there's also this really beautiful customer relationship piece that people are spending significant time in.
Well, that's a great picture you just painted, Lexi. And just I'm going to put one small thing on top of this, which is looking at the wish list on your account and thinking, should I buy this stuff or not? This month, next month, or it's too much, or I can afford it for myself. All right, moving on. The next thing I would like to cover is the number of downloads shopping apps generated this year. And how does this number look in perspective?
Yeah, this is an exciting one. So we're on track for the full year to see about 6 billion new downloads of shopping apps. So this does not include any app you've downloaded in the past that maybe you uninstalled and are reinstalling. It's the complete first time you've installed is what we're measuring. It also doesn't include like app updates or anything of that nature. So it's really a pretty impressive figure. In the first half of the year, we saw about 3 billion. So we're on track to hit around 6 this year. And that's up about 5% year on year. We tend to see, especially with big retailers, because there is a bit more on the back end, right? Like you have logistics and operations and things of that nature, maybe a brick and mortar store,
Mhm.
that we do see, people get a bit more ingrained in habits in the big trend in the sort of big retailers that they have close to their house or that are available in their country. So seeing that many new downloads is really impressive because we do see a lot of e-commerce players that are coming in. Now, across the spectrum, we use App IQ taxonomy, which is our advanced kind of classification system. And we see that over half of all of these downloads are coming from e-commerce players like Amazon, for instance. And if you include retailers, which is more of a direct one brand like Shein or Temu, that's actually that percentage jumps to about 73% of all downloads coming from those types of apps. We do see, supermarkets and shopping centers and malls and buy now, pay later showing up, but the bulk of downloads are happening in that space. We do see in terms of growth, supermarkets is actually a big area of growth globally, around 3x the growth rate from 5 years prior. Buy now, pay later has grown significantly over the last 5 years, but there is some softening happening in the recent months and years there. And then this also kind of varies by country. But for instance, in the UK, we saw like pharmacy apps had grown nearly 4x and were a small segment, but growing quite fast. And then we also see things like coupons and rewards in the shopping space being a big one, especially last year and this year as consumers were really hit with a bit of inflation pressure on their wallets, we
Yeah.
did start to see, discount retailers and then things like coupons and rewards, even alternative financing as well. So, things like buy now, pay later, kind of popping up because people are a little bit concerned about price point and sort of being able to afford everything that they've wanted to afford in holiday season and throughout the year.
Yeah, but still on the background of this inflation trend we see for the last couple of years, people continue to download apps and the number of downloads continue to grow. I vaguely remember the moment a few years ago when people were talking about the stagnation of the app industry, the moment where we kind of believed that it was a plateau, the number of downloads were not growing, like it's pretty stable. It doesn't look like that picture anymore, even not even close. Let's switch the gear at this point and go to the top 10 shopping apps. We all love top 10s, right? Movies, songs. So what are these? What features do they have in common? And what sets the leading apps like these apart from the rest? Well, besides making the money, of course.
That is a great question. So this is looking at H1, so the first half of this year. Some of the top players, and some of these apps are unique to say India, where there's a large base, so they do show up for the top players and downloads on the global scale. But we have Shein, Amazon, Shopee, Temu, Meesho, which again, that's one that's more unique to India, Alibaba.com, Lazada, AliExpress, Shopsy, Flipkart. So a lot of big names. And we do see some really interesting things pan out for what types of features they're using. In terms of table stakes, as in the things that all of these players do, first and foremost is third-party payment options. So obviously they need to provide a way that is frictionless and convenient and what the user would want to do for third-party payment. So some things, for instance, we see this on mobile web as well, is the inclusion of Google Pay or Apple Pay to make it even simpler from like your wallet app on your phone, but also paying how you want to pay. So we do see a lot of options still. There's Amazon Pay, which can be popular in the US, and other ways of payment. So that's big, right? Getting to that point of having a very simple, frictionless experience and secure. I think that's a really great thing mobile does well, is you have that enhanced kind of security if you use some of those native features for finance. That's one. Two other features, there's about three actually that are also pretty much all of these apps in the top 10 use, curated shopping content. So that is the algorithm that are at play, the AI that these companies have that help tailor things to you. So when you open your phone and when you open your app, it feels like a store for you, not just a general store. And that is one of the most important parts of a mobile strategy, I would say, is that this is, your phone is your most kind of personal device. You've got your banking apps, you might do your taxes on it, you have your photos of your kids. It's the device you called people during COVID lockdowns that connected you with family. It's got your email, your calendar, like where you're supposed to be at what time. So it is a very personal device. And what's the beauty of a mobile app is that when you open it and if there's that curated shopping view, it feels like you walk into a store that's designed for you. And that's part of the beauty is that mobile apps can really remove that friction and better than mobile web, right? Because in theory, you're logged in into your mobile app. That would be the goal so that you can have a really, really personalized experience. And that's complementary to in-store as well. So it can really help bridge that gap, especially that can help you find things in store if you're in a big super center, for instance. So that's another big table stakes, I'd say. The two others are hourly and daily deals. And I really love this one because there's a little bit of gamification in this. And we do see these big players leveraging those kind of the deals to keep you coming back. Maybe you spin a wheel to access a different code or to get a new deal. So that's that kind of gamification that's done exceedingly well in the gaming vertical that we see play out. And in some other verticals, like, we've seen those techniques in Robinhood, the stock trading app in the US, where there's a bit of getting a free stock and then confetti and things of that nature, where it's that little bit of gamification that delights the user. And lastly, there's member rewards. So we know apps are super important for loyalty and for lifetime value of a customer. So there's features that help that, right? There's apps, trackers to show you're achieving your next goal, to unlock a coupon or a discount or some kind of cash in app. And so those member rewards are really important to keep people coming back and keep them loyal. So those are the big ones. I think we also see outside of the top 10 that across those four I just spoke about, we see that actually of the top 30 apps, it's sitting between 75 and 83% of the top 30 are including that. So those are pretty table stakes. I'd say some other features that we see that are showing up a lot: buy now, pay later. So again, offering the alternative financing option. So financing and how you pay for things is a very important part of that friction. You get to the checkout and then you bail and leave that cart for next month.
Right.
There's also, I think, the other possibly underutilized feature is exclusive app deals. We actually only saw 4 of these retailers do that, and I think that's a little bit of a miss. Sephora has done a great job of that over the years, of having exclusive, particularly during Black Friday and Cyber Monday, exclusive app deals that you can only get by using their mobile app. And so I think that's a really powerful one that we could see really shape more daily engagement and also just drive more value. Marks and Spencer's in the in the UK did this really nicely, where they had a 12 days of Christmas campaign where each day they'd have some kind of daily deal that people would unlock. So these are great features. And I think there's one more to kind of mention, and I want to mention it because of Shein. Only 4 of these players actually have this feature, but there's that save for later, as you mentioned. We tend to see people use their cart as like a wish list almost. You just add to cart and you just save this massive list, and eventually you go through and kind of curate. Shein did something really interesting. Shein is obviously it's fast fashion, and it's tends to be more Gen Z millennial women. And they made their app very Instagrammable in its presence. It kind of looked like a social app more than a shopping app at times. Even the images of clothes look like an influencer is curating it, not a corporation that's taking it in a room with models, and formal laying it out. There's this authenticity layer. And as part of that, there's a heart function. So it's a subtle difference. But instead of like add to cart or like save to wish list, you just heart it like you would on Instagram, and it saves that way, which I think is a really subtle but powerful UX kind of change that targets their core market. And they've done exceedingly well with engaging consumers. So I think that's a really interesting one that I would say could help people think a little bit outside the box about mobile first kind of habits from other apps that you could bring in and make it more of a kind of growth hack in a sense, maybe, or growth engage the consumer experience there.
Exactly. Devil is in details. These small things matter. Even that just a small thing is the way you put some item to your wish list. In this case, it's heart. It automatically brings up your emotions associated with the Instagram and apps like this. And your perception all of a sudden becomes you're not in the real shopping apps for big brands. Closer to you, closer to people who you trust, which we just mentioned are influencers on social media. And it really resonates with me, this concept that, to me, shopping list, even on Amazon, looks to me like a part of my apartment. It's not physical, it's virtual, but it feels to me like it's just a space in my apartment, but it's in my phone. And think about it. How many times you can go to a real physical store to check something out? When it's closed, when you're far away from the place, you don't get a chance to do that. In the app, you can just pull up your iPhone, open the app, and you're there. So it's a psychology. It's really a powerful thing to leverage for e-commerce apps. Let's talk about newcomers on the list. And are there any surprises for you?
This is a great one. I think maybe not a surprise now, since they have gained a lot of steam and we all probably see them everywhere, but Temu is the biggest newcomer across kind of the top 10 list globally and in the key markets that they've launched. So Temu is a mobile first. And when we say mobile first, we mean its strategy focuses on the app as the first sort of port of call, and then the website supports the app kind of a situation versus say, we've got what we would call bricks and clicks, like a Walmart where you had a store that made an e-commerce presence that then made an app. And then you've got Amazon, for instance, that was an e-commerce presence that made an app. But when we have these mobile first players, the focus is that mobile is the driving factor. And you see that kind of strategy shift kind of trickle down from all parts of the business, I'd say. And you see how important mobile is and how much they double down on it. So this one's really interesting because actually, as of October, Temu has more weekly active users than the Walmart app in America. And that really surprised me. Because Walmart, I mean, you are doing shopping in person,
Right.
but there's that grocery element, which can be very habitual and can get people coming back. Because a lot of Walmarts have groceries as a core part of what they offer. So Temu, now we need to see how this plays out a bit because they're in heavy user acquisition stage. So you're getting lots of new users into the app, and how they keep them over time is yet to be seen. But even still, that is super impressive to me that they can kind of create that type of tidal wave traction in a market like the US, which has historically not responded to overseas apps as not necessarily favorably, but they haven't responded to them with such a overwhelming people moving into these apps. Now, we've seen apps like AliExpress try to crack into the US and be a competitor to Amazon, and it just did not, it might sit in the top 10 a little bit, but it did not occupy the number one spot for months and months and months in the way that Temu has. They are very aggressive with their user acquisition strategy. They spend a lot of money and have some very sophisticated techniques. They did do a Super Bowl ad last year, which is famously expensive.
Yeah.
And they're competing by price, right? Price point is by and large that big element they're at play, trying to show, goods that you can get for much cheaper. But they're also huge on gamification. There's lots of opportunities to play little mini games in the app, to have countdowns that encourage you to kind of access the next lever, to send referrals to friends and get new coupons. And by and large, it's a mobile first experience. So they've made it so easy and fun to be in the app that I think that is a huge selling point. But again, the price point is a huge port of call for them. Globally, outside the US, Temu's number one in the UK, in Australia, in New Zealand. It's gaining traction in South Korea and Japan, where they've launched more recently in the last couple of months, and really ranking in the top ranks amongst other key players. In Southeast Asia, we're seeing traction in the Philippines and Malaysia, where they've recently launched, but they're not as much traction there as we would have as we've seen in other markets, which could be due to the presence of apps like Lazada and Shopee, which are very similar in construction in a sense, like very mobile first, and have been there for years and have a lot of existing goodwill in a sense and users. And the other thing that's particularly interesting about Lazada and Shopee, especially in Southeast Asia, is they have their own financing options that run the gamut from like Shopee Pay or Lazada Pay to buy now, pay later systems to microloans and things that are coming strictly through Shopee and Lazada. So having that in-house financing option can potentially be that point of kind of inertia to move to a different brand. You've got your kind of financing through Lazada, and that's within the Lazada app. So that might be enough to keep a lot of users there versus moving over to a competitor that's new and does not have the same financing options available.
That's really interesting picture, Lexi. What parting thoughts do you have about the report? What kind of takeaways you would like to have our listeners after this episode?
Yes, there's a lot of tips. So as I mentioned, this report has market insights, which is mostly what I've talked about. And then there's these sort of more practical hands-on things you can do. And my top 5 would be leverage your paid and organic user acquisition. So don't forget about organic. It can be very powerful. Things like in-app events, which are new kind of features you can use through the app stores, as well as your keyword strategy. So number 2 is actually more about your keyword strategy and how that plays out, especially with paid search ads too. That's a really interesting space where you can bid on branded terms and kind of capitalize on that high intent traffic. Number three, gamification. Shopping it can be exceedingly fun, and I think you can make it even more fun by adding in gamified techniques, rewarding users, adding little mini games, or giving them some kind of game of chance to get a new code. Number four would be to monitor your ad creatives. That's a really great way of seeing how people are of your competitors, how they're responding to different ad formats, but also value propositions in the creatives, and also the types of creatives. We've seen some really great TikTok ads performing exceedingly well that are more almost lo-fi, that don't look big budget, that look like kind of funny memes, and they can work very well. So ad creatives would be the next one. And number five would be to look at partnerships. So we have a metric called cross-app usage and cross-app affinity, where you can see how many users are using other types of apps or how likely they are. So maybe they only 1% use that app, but they're exceedingly likely to have a similar base. And that shows you where some other potentially apps that you would not have thought of could be ripe for partnerships. You could access a bigger size of that pool who is, has a high affinity for what you guys are offering in your app. So I think those would be my five to kind of consider, especially, the holidays are kind of right in front of us actually right now, but going forward into 2024, really important strategies to kind of make your mobile strategy sing and stand out in front of the other big players.
Great. This is great. Okay, to land this plane, the final question before I let you go, how can people get in touch with you and get more information about what you do?
Of course. So you can follow Data.ai on all the socials, LinkedIn, X or Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We've recently launching TikTok, so more data coming to you soon. You can find me on LinkedIn at Lexi Sydow. That's probably where I'm most active, and I'm very happy to connect and answer questions. And then last but not least, you can follow along all the great insights that our team is producing on our blog at data.ai/insights. We publish every week lots of new blog posts and reports.
Lexi, thank you so much for coming on the show and spending time with us. It was great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And that was Lexi Sydow, Director of Corporate Marketing and Insights at Data.ai. To listen to more episodes, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Just search for Business of Apps and you will find us easily. Remember, we release episodes on Mondays, so subscribe and you'll be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer as soon as we release them. And please don't forget to leave us a review or comment on iTunes. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessofapps.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Apps podcast. For more, head on over to businessofapps.com.